Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video, we are looking at HIMS and HERS health. It is time for another update. And this stock has had a very lucrative week. It's up 45%. This week alone, it's generated a pretty substantial movement to the upside. But the question remains, does this mean that we will get the sustained break, that we will get the extension to new all-time highs in a direct fashion? Does this mean that the correction, the internal pattern within this movement is complete? Well, we will answer that and more today. We will highlight how breaking the relevant levels of resistance we have been tracking previously would signal a slight shift in the interpretations we must track on this chart, and we will of course track the most likely patterns that can still play out here in the smaller time frame and the larger time frame as well. So let's start with the larger structure to provide the context for what we have here on this chart. Here we haven't had a very healthy structure to begin with. We were looking ideally to form a larger leading diagonal, in which case we would have liked to see here something like a 1, 2, 3, 4 and a 5. Technically, we would have extended sufficiently within this as a wave 3, but the internal pattern wouldn't be ideal as part of a larger leading diagonal, because within this wave, the easiest pattern to track is a diagonal structure itself, a 5-wave pattern, and as part of a larger leading diagonal, we would have actually required to build a 3-wave pattern instead, where technically, yes, it can work out. We can consider this to have been a wave A up here, a B wave down, and a wave C that would have extended to higher prices in this movement. It's really not ideal if you ask me. I would prefer to consider this to have been instead a wave C, which is what we have here on the chart, a large A, B, C pattern within a potential wave 1, or a wave A, part of an even larger wave 3 to the upside that would still allow the bullish interpretation to work out. Now, sure, we didn't break the levels of support that would have allowed this to be a wave 3 and this a wave 4, but it's not out of the woods yet. We still have internal levels of resistance that can still lead to even lower prices that we want to see broken for the next indication that a bottom is in place. And this is probably going to be the most important levels that we would overall break within this structure. So here we already had this interpretation in place where we would have been looking for an A, B, C structure within this as a wave 2 or whatever correction it really is. It's not that important currently, but for this we would have needed to build a 5-wave pattern within the wave C itself. The wave C must be a 5-wave pattern. This is non-negotiable, and I do not find it likely that it would be complete at this point. I would still be lacking at the very least a larger wave 4 and a wave 5 to consider a 5-wave pattern to have been in place. In fact, we would have actually preferred to form extensions to lower prices within this wave 3 itself, but this is out of the question now that we have gotten a secondary break, and this time a sustained one beyond the relevant levels of resistance we had for this interpretation. And most recently we have actually gotten, today actually, a sustained break even for a slightly different scenario where instead we were tracking a larger WXY pattern. This has also become an unlikely outcome in my opinion. So we pedal back to what we have had in place previously. This as a wave 3 that actually needs to be considered as complete. This as a wave 4 correction that would be building a pretty ideal structure currently, nothing unexpected, similar proportions with what we had here in a wave 2, right? And we are looking so far at only a 3-wave move to the upside, it seems. We have, for this, the levels of resistance up to the 61.8% retracement, so we are talking about the $36.1 level, where so far we have pushed into the 50% retracement most recently today at $30 before getting a slight rejection. Now, sure, it's still too early to even consider this wave to the upside, this internal structure to be complete, and this is what we will be tracking, of course, but I am looking for this to very possibly be building only an A, B, C pattern in this area, where it doesn't need much to actually form a top, but currently I would find it preferable that we actually extend slightly higher as the wave C once again must build a 5-wave pattern. Now, can it build a WXY correction which can only build a 3-wave pattern in this area? Yes, that is also a possibility. although that is more of an outlier within a larger ending diagonal like what we are tracking in this overall wave C to the downside, right? It is typically the case that every single wave in this structure is an ABC pattern itself. Doesn't always happen, but those are generally outliers. So let's move into the smaller time frame, and previously we have been considering even the possibility of something like a 5-wave pattern to be building in this structure, and we hadn't actually broken the levels of support for an internal wave 4, but the proportions of this wave 4 have actually made it unlikely to me that it would still work out. I will still consider it a possibility if we only build a 3-wave pattern in this area. I will be looking for a potential 1-2 setup or something along those lines if we form a top only within a 3-wave structure in this area. But I currently do not necessarily consider this to be a high likelihood, a preferable outcome. I would be rather cautious of such an interpretation. So we will set this aside, we will leave it for when it is necessary. Again, technically a possible scenario. Realistically, might not be as favorable and quite difficult to track in reality, as I would be able to even consider this to have actually been a truncation within an internal ABC structure, where this would have been a wave 5 that failed to generate an additional low, and in reality it might be rather building a 5-wave pattern in this area, and we might not even realize it. So, as you notice, there is a common theme on this chart. There is a lot of risk, and that is inherent on charts that have weak and unhealthy structures. It is to be expected that we will not be able to find necessarily the most probable structures, the most probable trade setups, as those charts tend to be quite fragile. Now, let's consider what we would track within this movement to the upside within the idea of a wave C. Well, I would probably look for something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 in this structure, where within the wave 3 itself, I would consider even the possibility of an impulse within this as a potential wave C. In fact, I believe it possible that this entire structure, this entire wave C, would instead be an impulse, but I do not want to get ahead of myself. I believe it best to leave that decision making of what type of pattern to actually track to the later stages when we have more information and when it is actually necessary. And for now, I will be focusing primarily on this wave to the upside that I would actually expect to still build an impulse. I can tell you quite confidently that this structure is quite difficult. It has many options in which it could be tracked. I could consider this to all be just a series of 1-2 setups. All of this. And this to have been the wave 3 to the upside. And for this reason, the main level of support I would need to track that would first provide the strong indication that an internal top would be in place and that an impulse would no longer be working out would have to be here the 50% retracement, the $25.2 level. At this point, I would consider that this would be something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5, where the wave 3 itself could actually extend even higher. Within this wave 3, I could track something like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and within this wave 5 itself, we could have something like an ending diagonal, where we would actually like to see one more high. We have one too many waves to consider the impulse complete, and one too few waves to actually consider once again the impulse complete, where this wave 5 would be an ending diagonal. So for this interpretation, I would primarily like to form one more high against the 61.8% retracement for an internal area of support down to $27.3. Is this the only possible outcome for an extension? Of course not. As I was saying, it is an extremely difficult pattern, but this is what I believe to be the most valuable pattern to track internally within this structure. If we go within the smaller time frame here, we might even prefer that this wave 3 had actually extended all the way up here. This would have been the wave 4 instead, and we would have something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and it is going to be quite difficult ultimately, but this area of support in yellow actually covers that interpretation as well. If we break below $27.3, we would have a pretty good idea that this wave 3 in blue would have a top in place at the very least, and we would need to look for the larger wave 4 correction. And if we break even that, well, we would actually not even be able to track this idea of an impulse any longer. We will have to track a larger diagonal structure in this area, most likely, in most cases. Again, it is technically possible for this to have been a 1, 2, 3, but I really do not like this tiny wave 2 correction. I find it unlikely. And for now, I believe it best to stop here, not go any further throughout the million possible interpretations within this structure, as I believe they will mostly generate confusion. We are overall looking to potentially build a wave C in this structure. This would be a 5-wave pattern primarily, and the ideal target for such a wave C would be the 100% extension of the wave A. Well, that sits at $37.5, so just above the 61.8% retracement. Although keep in mind that is an ideal target and it doesn't need to get there. If it doesn't get there, it doesn't mean it's not a valid wave C. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and if you enjoy our content and want to support us directly, check out our channel membership. And other than that, let me know what else you would like me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I wish you a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.